Hey guys, have you ever noticed that some people drain you the moment they walk into the room? You can't quite explain it, but your chest tightens, your mind clouds, and suddenly, what should have been a normal interaction leaves you restless and exhausted. Here's the truth: not every bond in your life is meant to be permanent, and sometimes the bravest, most stoic decision you can make is to let go. Now, I know what you're thinking, but what if it's my friend? What if it's family? What if I owe them loyalty? Marcus Aurelius reminds us you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Strength isn't in clinging to what hurts you. Strength is in choosing peace over poison, dignity over guilt, self-respect over endless compromise. Today, we're diving into 9 clear signs that you should cut ties, even with family or friends. And I promise you this: once you recognize these signs, you'll never unsee them again. These are the red flags that erode your peace, your confidence, and your sense of worth. Ignore them, and you'll suffer quietly. Face them, and you'll step into a freedom that most people never dare to claim. Stay with me, because by the end of this journey, you'll see why distance is not cruelty, it's clarity. Why silence is not weakness, it's wisdom. And why walking away doesn't mean you stopped loving someone. It means you finally started loving yourself. So let's begin. The first sign is one you've probably encountered more times than you care to admit. Sign 1: people who always make money. Excuses. Have you ever noticed how some people always seem to have a convenient excuse when it comes to money? Not when they're paying for themselves. Not when they're booking a trip they want, buying the newest gadget, or showing off a dinner with someone they're trying to impress. But when it comes to you, when it's time to share, to contribute, to support, you suddenly hear the same tired line: "Sorry, I just don't have the money right now." At first, you feel empathy. We all know what it's like to struggle. Times get hard, budgets stretch thin, and Stoicism teaches us compassion. Epictetus said, "Be tolerant with others and strict with yourself." So you give them the benefit of the doubt. You cover the cost. You excuse their absence. You tell yourself, "They're going through something. I should be understanding." But over time, a pattern emerges. While they're quick to indulge their own pleasures, their generosity toward you is non-existent. Their poverty only shows up when it's convenient, when it shields them from responsibility or obligation. And that's when you realize something powerful: this is not about money. It's about value. A personal story. I once had a friend who embodied this pattern perfectly. Whenever we planned a trip, he was the first to say, "Sorry, I can't afford it." But the very next week, I'd see photos of him at expensive restaurants or boasting about a new gadget. One time, I invited him to join a simple road trip. Nothing fancy, nothing expensive. He declined again, citing money problems. Days later, I found out he had splurged on a weekend getaway with other friends. That was the moment I realized. It wasn't about finances. It was about how little he valued my presence. He wanted the thrill of indulgence, the status of certain friendships. But when it came to me, the excuse of money was enough to brush me aside. Psychological insight. This behavior is rooted in something deeper than selfishness. It's about priorities. People reveal what they truly value by where they put their time, energy, and yes, their money. If someone constantly can afford to contribute when it comes to you, but never hesitates to spend on themselves or others, they're telling you, without words, that you are not a priority. The truth is, relationships aren't sustained by constant calculations of who pays what. They're sustained by fairness, by reciprocity, by an unspoken balance of giving and receiving. When that balance is broken, when one side only takes while the other only gives, resentment grows like poison in the soil. Marcus Aurelius warned us the value of a man is measured by the objects he pursues. If someone pursues luxury for themselves but denies the simplest obligations toward you, then, in their eyes, you are not worth the effort. Now, here's where Stoicism empowers you. You cannot control whether someone values you. You cannot control whether they treat you fairly, but you can control what you allow. You can control the standards you set, and you can decide when enough is enough. Seneca put it bluntly, "He who does not prevent a crime when he can, encourages it." If you keep tolerating someone's excuses, if you keep letting them exploit your patience, you're silently encouraging the disrespect. Setting boundaries is not cruelty, it's justice. So what should you do? First, stop justifying their behavior. Don't cover their excuses with your empathy. Second, notice the pattern. Are you always the one giving while they're always taking? Third, decide what respect looks like for you. If you value equality, then demand it, not with anger, but with clarity. A modern reflection. Think of it like a business partnership. If one partner always invests while the other always withdraws, the company collapses. Relationships are no different. They are joint ventures of the heart. And if someone refuses to contribute, not financially, but emotionally, spiritually, or practically, then the venture becomes unsustainable. Walking away doesn't mean you're greedy. It doesn't mean you love money more than friendship. It means you refuse to subsidize someone else's selfishness at the expense of your dignity. These take away. Ask yourself who in your life constantly hides behind money as an excuse to avoid responsibility. And, more importantly, why are you still giving them the benefit of the doubt? A healthy relationship doesn't need grand gestures of wealth. It doesn't demand luxury trips or expensive gifts. It simply requires fairness, equality, mutual care. If someone cannot offer that, if they see you only as a resource, or worse, as someone unworthy of their effort, then you have a choice. The Stoic path is clear: step back, protect your peace, respect yourself enough to say, if you cannot share life with me in fairness, then I will no longer share my life with you. Because in the end, the currency of true friendship is not money, it is respect. And once respect is gone, no amount of excuses can buy it back. Sign 2. People who constantly argue and drag you into conflict. Have you ever sat down with someone, hoping for a simple conversation, only to realize, within minutes, you're in a battle you never asked for? It starts small. A disagreement over dinner plans, a harmless comment about work, maybe even a joke. But instead of letting it pass, they seize on it, twisting words, raising their voice, forcing you to pick sides. By the time it's over, you're left feeling drained, anxious, and strangely guilty, as if peace itself is a crime you committed. Why some people love conflict. People who thrive on conflict don't argue because they're seeking truth. They argue because they crave control. Every debate is a stage where they can perform their insecurity, disguising it as strength. Epictetus once said, "Any person capable of angering you becomes your master." And this is the trap. They bait you into defending yourself, into proving your worth, until you've surrendered your peace just to keep them calm. It's not about the issue. It's about their need to dominate. And the longer you stay in this cycle, the more you'll find yourself bending, apologizing, and even doubting your own perspective just to avoid another fight. A story of realization. I once had a friend who turned every gathering into a courtroom. One evening, a group of us was planning a weekend trip. A simple disagreement came up about where to go. Instead of listening, he escalated. His tone sharpened, his words cut, and then he turned to me. "Back me up. Tell them I'm right." That moment changed everything. I wasn't just being asked to share an opinion. I was being conscripted into his personal war. And I realized something powerful every time I gave in, every time I backed him up. I was feeding the very behavior that destroyed our friendship. The psychology of endless arguing. Why do some people argue endlessly? Psychologists call it low emotional regulation. Instead of processing discomfort, they externalize it, turning every minor irritation into a fight. Beneath the surface lies insecurity. Conflict becomes their way of proving they matter, of grasping for control in a world that makes them feel powerless. But here's the hidden cost. Constant exposure to this kind of person erodes your sense of safety. Relationships should be sanctuaries, places where your nervous system can rest. But when you're always bracing for the next fight, your body stays in survival mode. Over time, it wears you down. Stress rises, resentment builds, and peace becomes a stranger in your own life. The Stoic way of handling conflict. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." When someone thrives on conflict, the worst thing you can do is mirror them. Don't argue, don't explain, don't get pulled into their storm. Instead, step back into your center, speak calmly, or walk away. The Stoic doesn't need to win every battle. In fact, the wise person sees that most battles are illusions. Ego against ego, pride against pride. Both sides convinced they're victorious, when in truth, both are enslaved to anger. Walking away isn't weakness, it's mastery. It's proof that you control your emotions, rather than letting your emotions control you. Practical boundaries. So how do you deal with people like this? Recognize the pattern. When you feel a conversation turning into combat, pause. Ask yourself, do I need to engage, or can I choose silence? Refuse the bait. You don't have to pick sides. You don't have to prove a point. Sometimes the most powerful statement is no statement at all. Set clear limits. If a person continues to drag you into arguments, let them know directly, "I value peace." If this keeps turning into fights, I'll need to step back and mean it. Boundaries are not threats. They are promises you make to yourself. A modern reflection. Think about the most inspiring leaders, whether it's Nelson Mandela, Barack Obama, or even athletes like Serena Williams. Do they waste their energy on endless petty disputes? No. Their strength lies in their composure, in their ability to rise above provocation. If greatness demands calm, why should you settle for relationships that keep you in chaos? Life is too short to keep rehearsing the same arguments with people who refuse to grow. The takeaway. Ask yourself honestly, who in your life thrives on conflict? Who leaves you feeling exhausted after every interaction? And why do you continue to give them the power to disrupt your peace? A true friend, a loving family member, a worthy partner. These are not people who drag you into battles. They are people who stand beside you in silence, who listen more than they speak, who choose understanding over ego. The Stoic path demands courage, but also discernment. Not every relationship deserves saving. If someone forces you into conflict again and again, it's not just a sign of who they are. It's a mirror reflecting what you've been willing to tolerate. So step back, choose calm, protect your inner fortress. Because in the end, peace is not found in winning arguments. It's found in walking away from them. Sign 3. People who dismiss or minimize your struggles. Have you ever opened your heart to someone truly vulnerable, truly raw, only to watch them brush it aside as if your pain were a small inconvenience? You pour out your worries, hoping for understanding, maybe even comfort, and instead they change the subject, downplay your struggles, or worse, turn the conversation back to themselves. That sting you feel in that moment, it's more than disappointment. It's a signal that you are not being valued, the subtle betrayal of dismissal. One of the deepest human needs is to be heard, not to be fixed, not to be rescued, simply to be acknowledged. When someone minimizes your pain, they are essentially saying your struggles are not worthy of my attention. And that, my friend, cuts deeper than any open insult. I remember a time I confided in a longtime friend. My father's health was declining, and I was carrying the crushing weight of balancing work, family, and worry. I hoped for a moment of empathy. Instead, he immediately shifted the conversation to his workload. Yeah, that's tough. Anyway, my boss has been on my back nonstop. My pain was invisible to him. My struggle didn't exist. That moment stayed with me. It wasn't just about that one conversation. It was about realizing that when someone consistently dismisses your struggles, they're showing you their priorities, and you're not one of them. Psychology behind minimization. Why do some people do this often? It's rooted in their own discomfort with vulnerability. To acknowledge your pain would force them to acknowledge their own. So instead, they deflect, diminish, or compete with you in suffering. Psychologists call this conversational narcissism. It's when someone redirects every exchange back to themselves, seeking validation while denying yours. Over time, this destroys trust. Because deep down, you realize this is not a safe person. Marcus Aurelius once said, "When another blames you or hates you, their actions are theirs, and they are slaves to their own opinions." The same truth applies here. When someone dismisses your pain, it says nothing about your worth. It says everything about their limitations. And Epictetus reminds us we have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak. True wisdom is not in grand speeches, but in attentive silence. The person who refuses to listen reveals their lack of wisdom and their lack of respect, the impact of being dismissed. Think about what happens inside you when this pattern repeats. At first, you feel hurt. Then you start to hesitate. You stop sharing. You begin to carry your struggles in silence, not because they're lighter, but because you've learned that this person will not honor them. And slowly, you realize the relationship itself has become heavy. This is why Stoicism urges us to examine the company we keep. Seneca warned associate with those who will make a better man of you. Welcome those whom you yourself can improve. The process is mutual. If your struggles are dismissed, there is no mutual growth, only imbalance. A modern example. Picture this: you tell a friend you're exhausted from working 2 jobs to support your family. Instead of empathizing, they say, "That's nothing. I had to stay late at the office 3 times this week." Or you open up about feeling anxious, and they laugh it off. "Everyone's stressed. Just get over it." This isn't friendship. This isn't care. It's a performance of superiority, a way to elevate themselves by belittling you. And you don't need to tolerate it. The Stoic response. So how do you respond when someone minimizes your pain? First, remember the Stoic principle: control what is yours to control. You cannot force them to understand. You cannot demand their empathy, but you can decide how much access they get to your heart. You can say, "I need someone who will listen right now." If you can't, that's fine, but I'll take this elsewhere. Or you can simply withdraw. Not every truth needs to be spoken to every person. Your struggles deserve sacred ground, not trampled soil. A better kind of relationship. Real relationships are built on shared empathy. When you succeed, they celebrate with you. When you struggle, they sit with you. They don't compare. They don't compete. They don't dismiss. They witness. Seneca again. One of the most beautiful qualities of true friendship is to understand and to be understood. That is the gold standard. Anything less is counterfeit. The takeaway: ask yourself who in your life listens only to speak about themselves, who dismisses your burdens while demanding you carry theirs, and why do you keep allowing it? Life is too short to waste on shallow connections that erode your spirit. You deserve relationships where gratitude flows freely, where empathy is given without being begged for, where your struggles are honored as real and meaningful. Cut ties with those who cannot see your humanity. Step back from those who diminish your pain. Because every time you remove someone who dismisses you, you create space for someone who values you. And remember this: walking away from those who cannot listen is not cruelty. It's self-respect. Sign 4. People who force their beliefs on you. Have you ever had a conversation with someone that felt less like a dialogue and more like a sermon? You weren't being spoken to. You were being spoken at. Every word, every gesture carried the same message. I'm right. You're wrong. And I won't stop until you agree with me. This is the exhausting reality of people who force their beliefs, whether religious, political, or ideological, onto others. At first, you may think it's harmless. Maybe they're passionate. Maybe they care. But over time, you notice something. It's not passion. It's pressure. They don't want to share ideas. They want to control your mind. The weight of imposition. Friendship, love, family bonds. These should be gardens of freedom, a place where your individuality blooms, not where it's pruned into someone else's shape. When a person insists that your beliefs must align with theirs, they are not loving you. They are loving a reflection of themselves. I had a close friend once who was consumed by this very habit. Every time we met, he would try to convert me. not to a religion, but to his political ideology. Every conversation bent toward proving me wrong, as if my worth depended on how well I conformed to his worldview. At first, I tried to debate him. I thought, if I defend my perspective with reason, he'll respect me. But reason was not his goal. Victory was. And with every argument, our bond eroded until there was nothing left but frustration. The psychology of forced belief. Why do some people do this? Psychologists call it intellectual insecurity. When someone cannot stand the existence of different viewpoints, it's because those differences threaten their sense of certainty. By forcing you to agree, they protect their fragile identity. But here's the paradox: the more they try to impose their beliefs, the more they reveal their weakness. Forcing faith, forcing politics, forcing ideology. It's never about strength. It's about fear. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The opinion of 10,000 men is of no value if none of them know anything about the subject." Truth isn't validated by numbers or noise. It's measured by wisdom, and wisdom never needs to shout. Seneca also reminds us, why should I demand that the universe conform to my wishes, rather than accept calmly whatever happens? The same applies to human beings. To demand others conform to us is arrogance. To accept differences with calm, that is wisdom. The cost of forced conformity relationships that revolve around forced beliefs are suffocating. They strip away authenticity. Instead of being seen as a whole human being, you are reduced to a project, a soul to be corrected, a mind to be conquered. Think of it this way: if someone only values you when you agree with them, then their love is conditional. Their friendship is conditional. And conditional connection is no connection at all. We see this play out everywhere, in families torn apart by politics, in friendships destroyed over religion, in workplaces divided by ideology. Social media amplifies it. Arguments rage, egos flare, and yet no one truly listens. Why? Because no one is seeking truth. They're seeking validation. The Stoic, however, takes a different path. Epictetus said we have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak. True wisdom isn't in forcing, but in listening, in understanding, in knowing when to walk away from a pointless argument. So what do you do when someone tries to impose their beliefs? First, recognize the trap. You don't need to debate every point. You don't need to defend your worth through argument. Second, stay calm. Remember, their insistence reveals their insecurity, not your inadequacy. Third, set boundaries. You can say, I respect your beliefs, but I need you to respect mine as well. If they cannot accept that, then you already have your answer. The highest victory is not defeating the other person in debate. It's mastering your own ego. Because when you stop needing to win, you start winning where it matters, in peace of mind. A better kind of connection. The most beautiful relationships are built not on sameness, but on respect for difference. Think of Marcus Aurelius, who, despite being emperor, wrote constantly about humility and openness. He knew that forcing others to bend to your will creates only resistance and resentment, but honoring their freedom, that creates harmony. True friends don't impose, they inspire. They don't pressure, they invite. And they know that a bond rooted in freedom will always outlast one rooted in fear. The takeaway: Ask yourself who in your life constantly tries to reshape you into their image, who cannot accept your differences without turning them into debates. And why do you keep giving them access to your peace? The Stoic choice is not to fight harder. It is to walk lighter, to step back from relationships where freedom is crushed under the weight of control, to realize that letting go is not betrayal, it's self-preservation. Because the moment you stop defending yourself in every argument, the moment you stop trying to convince those who refuse to listen, you reclaim something priceless, your inner calm. And that calm, my friend, is worth more than winning any debate. Sign 5. When meeting someone brings you distress instead of peace. Have you ever noticed how the very thought of seeing someone can make your stomach tighten once upon a time? Being around them may have filled you with joy, but now, every meeting feels like a duty, a weight, an obligation you secretly wish you could avoid. This is one of the clearest signs that a relationship has shifted, and maybe even ended, long before you dared to admit it. When the energy changes, life changes us. Values shift, priorities evolve, and sometimes two people who once walked side by side suddenly find themselves on different roads. That doesn't mean either of you failed. It simply means the rhythm that once matched now falls out of sync. I once knew two childhood friends who were inseparable. They played together, dreamed together, shared everything. Years later, one had moved to the city, chasing a career. The other stayed in their hometown, building a quieter life. When they met again, their conversations felt strained. Polite questions, awkward silences, smiles that never reached the eyes. The bond was gone, not out of malice, but out of growth. This is what people often miss. Not all distance is betrayal. Sometimes distance is simply the echo of change, the psychology of distress. Why do we feel dread before meeting certain people? Because the relationship no longer aligns with who we are. Our nervous system knows before we do. Instead of anticipating laughter, it anticipates tension. Instead of joy, it anticipates performance. Psychologists call this emotional dissonance, when our inner reality no longer matches the role we're forced to play. Pretending drains us, and the longer we pretend, the heavier the relationship becomes. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." The same principle applies to relationships. If it is no longer real, no longer true, no longer life-giving, forcing it is a lie. Seneca also said true happiness is to enjoy the present, without anxious dependence upon the future. If someone's presence robs you of joy in the moment, what happiness can possibly grow there? The illusion of loyalty. One of the traps we fall into is mistaking endurance for loyalty. We think they've been in my life so long, I can't just let go. But Stoicism reminds us that clinging to what no longer serves us is not loyalty. It is attachment, and attachment to the wrong things erodes the soul. The truth. You can honor the past without dragging it into the present. You can cherish memories without forcing connections that no longer exist. Walking away doesn't erase the beauty of what was. It simply accepts the reality of what is. Imagine you have an old college friend. You used to party, laugh, dream big. But now, every time you see them, the conversation circles back to the same old jokes, the same stories, the same nostalgia. Meanwhile, You've grown. You've changed. Your priorities have shifted. Instead of feeling inspired, you feel stuck. This is not cruelty, it's reality. Life doesn't freeze, and pretending nothing has changed is the fastest way to suffocate growth. So how do you deal with relationships that bring distress instead of peace? First, acknowledge it honestly. Stop telling yourself it's just a phase. Pay attention to your body. If dread replaces excitement, that is truth speaking to you. Second, release the guilt. Letting go of someone doesn't mean you hate them. It means you respect both of you enough not to force what no longer fits. Third, create space. You don't have to burn bridges. Sometimes it's simply about stepping back, reducing contact, and allowing the relationship to find its natural place, whether that's in the background or the past. A Stoic perspective on change. Life is motion. Everything flows. Marcus Aurelius reflected often on the impermanence of all things. Observe always that everything is the result of change, and get used to thinking that there is nothing nature loves so well as to change existing forms and to make new ones like them. Relationships are no exception. The people who were right for you in one season may not be right in another. That is not tragedy. That is nature. The takeaway. Ask yourself who in your life leaves you feeling heavier, not lighter, after every encounter, who turns anticipation into anxiety, connection into obligation. If meeting someone consistently robs you of peace, that is your signal. Not to hate them, not to resent them, but to step back with clarity. The Stoic path is not about clinging. It's about flowing with life's natural rhythm. Some people walk with you for a chapter, some for the whole book. The wisdom lies in knowing the difference. So honor the past. Respect the memories, but don't let yesterday's bond become today's burden. Because every moment you spend forcing what no longer fits is a moment stolen from the connections waiting to grow in your present. And remember, letting go isn't always about rejecting others. Sometimes it's the highest form of respect for them and for yourself. Sign 6. People who constantly complain about themselves. Have you ever felt like someone only keeps you around as their personal dumping ground? Every time you meet, the conversation is the same, a litany of complaints. Their job is terrible, their partner is useless, their life is unfair. And no matter what you say, no matter how much comfort or advice you offer, they never change. They just keep pouring their misery into your lap, as if your only purpose is to carry it for them. At first, you may feel sympathy. Stoicism teaches us compassion. Epictetus said, "Be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a hard battle." And it's true. We all need someone to lean on. But there's a line between leaning and unloading, between sharing a burden and making you their permanent trash bin. And once that line is crossed, what once looked like friendship reveals itself as exploitation. A story of emotional overload. I once had a colleague, let's call her Sarah. She came to me every day, sighing, rolling her eyes, and unloading every grievance she could think of. My boss is awful. My husband doesn't help. My job is meaningless. At first, I listened, I cared. But during that time, my own mother was gravely ill. I was working long hours and carrying a mountain of stress myself. Yet Sarah never asked how I was, never paused to listen. She didn't want connection. She wanted a container. One day, after my mother's surgery, Sarah texted me angrily, upset that I hadn't responded quickly enough to her complaints. That was the moment I understood I wasn't her friend. I was her outlet, and I needed to step away. The psychology of constant complaining. Why do some people complain endlessly? Psychologists call it rumination, the cycle of repeating the same negative thoughts without moving toward solutions. It becomes addictive. Complaining provides temporary relief, a momentary sense of release. But like any addiction, it never resolves the underlying problem. And the person who listens without boundaries, they become collateral damage. They absorb the negativity, carrying emotions that aren't theirs until they feel drained, resentful, and empty. This is why it's so dangerous. Constant complainers don't just harm themselves, they harm everyone who listens to them. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." The complainer lives as if this truth doesn't exist. They surrender all power to circumstances, to other people, to fate. And in doing so, they chain themselves to misery. But here's the key. You don't have to let them chain you as well. Epictetus taught if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. To set boundaries with a complainer may make you look cold in their eyes, but in truth, you are practicing wisdom. The illusion of empathy without limits. We often trick ourselves into thinking that listening endlessly is kindness, that being the shoulder to cry on every time, no matter what, is a sign of loyalty. But this is a dangerous illusion. Empathy without limits is not kindness, it is self-betrayal. True compassion doesn't mean letting someone dump their pain on you forever. True compassion means encouraging them to grow, to act, to seek solutions. If they refuse, then the compassionate act is not to let yourself be destroyed, but to step away. A modern reflection. Think of the leaders, athletes, or artists you admire. Do they spend their lives complaining? No. They take ownership. They face hardship. Yes, but they channel it into action. David Goggins, for example, turned suffering into strength. He didn't deny pain. He transformed it. If greatness comes from responsibility, then why should you tether yourself to people who refuse it? So how do you deal with constant complainers? 1. Listen selectively. Not every word deserves your attention. 2. Redirect the conversation. Ask, what steps are you willing to take to change this? If they resist, they reveal they want pity, not progress. 3. Set boundaries. Be clear, I care about you, but I can't keep absorbing this. I need our conversations to be balanced. 4. Step away if needed. Your energy is sacred. Don't waste it on someone who refuses to honor it. The best relationships aren't one-sided. They are exchanges of joy, sorrow, laughter, and wisdom. They build resilience. They don't drain it. A real friend consoles you. Yes, but they also celebrate you. They don't just bring their struggles, they bring their gratitude. Seneca wrote, one of the most beautiful qualities of true friendship is to understand and to be understood. If you are only ever understanding and never understood, that is not friendship. That is exploitation. The takeaway. Ask yourself who in your life only comes to you with complaints, who never asks how you are, never listens, never lifts you, and why are you still giving them unlimited access to your time, your energy, your heart? Remember, the Stoic doesn't run from hardship, but neither do they adopt hardships that don't belong to them. Life is heavy enough. Don't let someone else's refusal to take responsibility become your burden to carry. Walking away from constant complainers is not cruelty, it's clarity. It's choosing peace over poison, growth over stagnation, dignity over endless negativity. And once you step back, you'll realize something liberating. Your energy is not infinite, but it is precious. Spend it wisely on people who lift you, not those who drain you. Sign 7. People who take promises lightly or break them easily. Have you ever sat waiting for someone who never showed up at first? You give them the benefit of the doubt. Traffic, work, an emergency. But then the message comes. Sorry, I forgot. Or worse, silence. In that moment, it isn't just their absence that hurts. It's the realization that you were never a priority. The silent wound of broken promises. A promise is not just words. It's a contract of trust. When someone says, I'll be there, they're not only agreeing to show up, they're telling you that you matter. And when that promise is broken, it isn't just an appointment missed, it's a message received. You don't matter enough for me to remember. I remember a friend who made this a habit. We'd set plans, and time after time, she either canceled last minute or simply didn't show. At first, I excused it. She's busy. Life gets in the way. But after the 5th, 6th, 7th time, I realized something painful. She didn't mean harm, but she didn't value me enough to keep her word. And that was the turning point. Because every broken promise chips away at the foundation of trust until the entire relationship collapses under the weight of indifference. Why people break promises. Psychologists call it inconsistent reliability. When someone's words and actions rarely match, sometimes it's due to disorganization or forgetfulness. But more often, it's about priorities. People remember what matters to them. They follow through where they see value. If someone constantly forgets you, it's not a memory problem, it's a value problem. Worse, repeated broken promises create what's known as learned distrust. You stop expecting, you stop believing, and eventually, you stop caring. By then, the relationship is already dead. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not true, do not say it. If it is not right, do not do it." To a Stoic, a promise is sacred. Words are not tools for convenience. They are reflections of character. Seneca also warned, "Fidelity is the most sacred possession of man." When someone takes their word lightly, they are not only disrespecting you, they are degrading themselves. The pattern of disrespect. Here's the truth. Someone who repeatedly breaks promises is telling you exactly how much space you occupy in their life. And if that space is small, then forcing yourself to stay only makes you smaller. Broken promises aren't just about events. They creep into every corner of the relationship. The friend who forgets to call back eventually forgets to stand up for you. The partner who shrugs off their commitments eventually shrugs off your needs. The family member who dismisses their word eventually dismisses your worth. A modern example. Think of the workplace. Imagine a colleague who constantly says, "Don't worry, I'll handle it," but never delivers. At first, you cover for them. Then you resent them. Eventually, the team collapses under the weight of mistrust. The same dynamic plays out in personal life. Reliability is not a luxury. It's the glue of every human bond. And once that glue dissolves, no relationship can hold. So what do you do when someone treats promises lightly? Notice the pattern. Everyone makes mistakes, but repetition reveals character. If they break their word often, believe them, not their words, but their actions. 2. Set the standard. You don't need to beg for respect. You simply live by your own code. I do what I say. I expect the same. 3. Say. Withdraw if necessary. If they cannot honor their word, step back. The Stoic does not cling to unreliable people, because unreliability is chaos, and chaos has no place in a peaceful life. The best relationships aren't built on constant grand gestures. They're built on small, consistent acts of reliability. The friend who shows up when they say they will, the partner who follows through, the family member who keeps their word even in small things. That is where trust lives. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." Integrity is not in declarations. It is in daily actions. The takeaway. Ask yourself who in your life takes promises lightly, who has taught you, through neglect, that their word means nothing, and why do you keep giving them the chance to keep breaking it? You cannot build peace on the ruins of broken promises. You cannot build trust on shifting sand. If someone treats their word as disposable, then you must treat the relationship as disposable too. Because at the end of the day, your time, your energy, your dignity, these are precious. And they deserve to be spent on people who honor them, not on people who forget them. The Stoic way is simple. Let your yes mean yes. Let your no mean no. Keep your word. Value those who do the same. And when someone shows you, over and over, that they will not, step back. Not in anger, not in bitterness, but in clarity. Because the truth is, this reliability is respect in action. And without respect, there is no relationship worth keeping. Sign 8. People who recycle the same worries without growth. Have you ever noticed how some people don't just worry? They rehearse their worries like a play that never ends every time you meet. The script is the same. They tell you about their boss, their relationship, their health, their finances. You listen, you advise, you comfort. But next week, next month, next year, it's the same complaint, the same problem, the same loop. At first, you feel compassion. We all struggle. We all need to vent. But soon, you realize they're not seeking solutions. They're seeking sympathy. And not just once, but endlessly. What looks like sharing becomes a performance, and you become the captive audience. The emotional drain of recycled worries. I once had a colleague who came to me every day with the same grievances about her job. I listened. I cared. I even offered concrete advice: update your resume, talk to HR, set boundaries. She nodded politely. Then, the next day, she repeated the same story, word for word. After months of this, I realized something harsh but true. She didn't want change. She wanted validation. She wanted the temporary relief of sympathy, but never the discomfort of action. And by listening endlessly, I wasn't helping her. I was enabling her. Psychology behind repetitive worry. This cycle is called rumination. Psychologists describe it as replaying the same problem over and over without moving forward. It feels productive, but it's a trap. Rumination creates the illusion of effort while ensuring nothing changes. And here's the danger: being around someone stuck in rumination can pull you into it too. Their anxiety becomes contagious. Their lack of action becomes your frustration. Instead of uplifting each other, you spiral together, downward. Marcus Aurelius warned, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment." The endless worrier lives as though they have no such power. They elevate every obstacle into a crisis, and in doing so, they surrender their agency. The Stoic response is the opposite: to confront problems directly, to act where you can, and to release what you cannot control. Seneca put it even more sharply: "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." For the chronic worrier, imagination becomes a prison cell. The cost of endless sympathy. Here's the trap: we mistake listening for love. We think sitting quietly while someone repeats the same worries is kindness. But true kindness does not indulge weakness. True kindness strengthens. And strength comes from facing reality, not rehearsing it endlessly. When you allow someone to recycle the same complaints without challenge, you are not helping them heal. You are helping them stay stuck. Think of someone who constantly complains about their partner. They don't listen. They don't care. They never change. You suggest therapy, communication, maybe even walking away. They nod. Then a week later, it's the same script. Nothing changes. At some point, you must ask, are they looking for solutions or for excuses to stay in misery? If it's the latter, then your presence is not support. It's permission. So how do you handle people who recycle the same worries? Interrupt the cycle. Instead of offering the same sympathy, ask, what action are you willing to take if they refuse? You know the truth. 2. Protect your energy. You are not a sponge for endless anxiety. You can step away without guilt. 3. Encourage growth. Remind them gently of Epictetus's wisdom. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. If they resist, let that resistance be theirs to carry, not yours. The best relationships aren't built on shallow sympathy. They're built on mutual growth. When you struggle, a true friend helps you rise. When they struggle, you do the same. That's balance. That's health. Seneca wrote, "Associate with those who will make a better man of you." Endless worriers do the opposite. They drain. They stall. They trap. And unless they're willing to grow, your only option is to step away. The takeaway: ask yourself, who in your life is always stuck in the same loop? Who repeats their worries like a song on repeat, year after year, without ever seeking change? And why are you still giving them your ears, your time, your energy? The Stoic choice isn't cruelty, it's clarity. You cannot save someone who refuses to act. You cannot heal someone who finds comfort in staying wounded. And you cannot keep sacrificing your peace for someone who mistakes sympathy for progress. Cutting ties doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care enough about your own growth to stop enabling their stagnation. It means you've learned that true friendship is not about rehearsing worries. It's about overcoming them together. So choose growth. Choose peace. Choose relationships where courage outweighs fear and action replaces endless complaint. Because in the end, life is too short to rehearse the same pain forever. Sign 9. People who boast excessively about the past. Have you ever met someone who can't stop talking about what they used to be, the awards they once won, the position they once held, the glory days of their youth? At first, it might sound impressive, even inspiring, but soon, you realize every conversation bends back to the same stories, the same victories, the same good old days. It's not admiration you begin to feel, it's fatigue. Because the truth becomes clear, they are not living in the present. They are trapped in the past, and being around them slowly pulls you backward. 2. The trap of past glories. I once knew a man who never let a conversation end without reminding everyone of the championship he had won in college. Every detail was etched in his memory: who they played, the score, the trophy. But when the topic shifted to his current life silence, he had nothing new to share. His identity was frozen in time. At first, I admired his pride, but after months of hearing the same story, I realized something sad. He wasn't celebrating his past. He was hiding in it. The psychology of excessive boasting. Why do people cling so tightly to past achievements? Psychologists call it identity foreclosure. When someone defines themselves entirely by past roles or accomplishments and never allows room for growth, it's a defense mechanism against the fear of irrelevance. But here's the danger: relationships with such people feel shallow. Instead of connecting in the present, you're forced into their museum of past glories. And little by little, you start to notice how lifeless those stories really are. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Do not dwell in the past, nor be anxious about the future, but live in the present moment wisely and justly." Seneca also warned, "Life is very short and anxious for those who forget the past, neglect the present, and fear the future." To boast endlessly about the past is to neglect the gift of now. Stoicism teaches that true worth is not in what you did yesterday, but in who you are today. Yesterday cannot be changed. Tomorrow is uncertain. Only this moment is yours to honor. The cost of living in the past. The excessive boaster doesn't just drain you with repetition. They rob the relationship of depth, because real connection requires presence. And if someone is always talking about what they were, they leave no room for who they are, or for who you are becoming. Even worse, their obsession with past victories often hides present emptiness. Instead of working toward new goals, they recycle old ones, using nostalgia as a shield against the discomfort of growth. Think of athletes who once stood on the world stage. Some spend their later years mentoring, growing, inspiring the next generation. Others spend them reliving the same highlight reel, bitter that their glory has faded. One path creates legacy, the other creates loneliness. The same is true in our own lives. When someone boasts endlessly about the past, it's not a celebration, it's a confession. A confession that the present feels empty and the future feels frightening. So what do you do when someone constantly drags you into the past? 1. See it clearly. Don't confuse endless boasting with confidence. True confidence doesn't need applause. 2. Stay present. Redirect conversations toward the now. That's a great story. What are you working on these days if they resist? You know the truth. They're clinging, not growing. 3. Set limits. If every interaction leaves you feeling drained, step back. You are not obligated to live in someone else's museum. Remember, a Stoic lives in the present. We honor the past, but we don't worship it. The best people to keep close aren't those who only shine in stories. They're those who shine in actions today. The friend who shows up for you now. The partner who builds with you now. The mentor who grows alongside you now. Epictetus said, "Don't explain your philosophy. Embody it." The past doesn't need to be explained, paraded, or glorified. The present needs to be lived. The takeaway: ask yourself who in your life always drags you back into yesterday, who clings to old victories because they're too afraid to create new ones, and why do you keep allowing their nostalgia to chain you? The Stoic choice is not to despise the past, but to honor it rightly, as memory, not identity, as inspiration, not imprisonment. Let go of those who boast endlessly, because their refusal to live in the present will slowly suffocate your own growth. Step into relationships with people who live fully, humbly, authentically, here and now. Because in the end, life isn't about how brightly you once shone. It's about how courageously you keep shining. So, my friend, we've walked through 9 clear signs, 9 reminders that not everyone in your life deserves a seat at your table. And though it can feel heavy, though it can feel almost cruel, remember this distance is not the same as hatred. Walking away is not the same as weakness. Sometimes, letting go is the most loving thing you can do, for them and for yourself. The Stoics taught us that peace begins within. Marcus Aurelius whispered across the centuries, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. That is your compass. That is your anchor. You cannot control who dismisses you, who argues with you, who breaks promises, who drains your spirit. But you can control who you allow into your sacred space. Imagine your life like a quiet garden. Some relationships bloom like flowers, fragrant and bright. Others grow like weeds, choking out your peace. The choice to pull them out is not cruelty. It is care. It is tending to the soil of your soul. And now, as this session comes to a close, I want you to take a breath. Let the lessons settle. Feel your heart soften. Feel your mind become still. If this journey spoke to you, if it gave you even a flicker of clarity, whisper back in return. You may subscribe channel, you may share this video, you may simply comment a single word, peacefulness. Let that be our quiet vow. Now, rest easy, protect your spirit, and walk gently with wisdom. Good night, sweet dreams.